Welcome, everyone. Very excited and long awaited to have Dr. Jacqueline Cooper Lemmon and Jen Vasey here today for a fantastic lecture. Now, we've got metabolic potential, the connection between microbiome, mitochondria, and blood sugar. Now, this is the basis of a metabolic balance discussion that we're going to have after this educational piece and talk to Jen Vasey about some really exciting things that are happening. And Dr. Jax is also going to share with us her collaboration with this incredible program, right?
Absolutely.
Dr. Jax, we've had you in a couple of times to IHN.
You have
in the physical space and now in the virtual space. We're happy to have you here for Metabolic Balance.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here for Metabolic Balance, and I'm really excited. So thank you to everyone who's joining us on this beautiful day to be with us to learn. And yeah, excited to share what I've seen firsthand, and we'll get into it shortly.
Very shortly. I'm Julia Brisky. I have been with IHN for 18 years, and I teach professional practice, one module, as well as do the international co-op. So we have with us, and she was ready to go, Dr. Jacqueline Cooper Lemmon. She brings extensive experience as a Canadian naturopathic doctor, specializing in medical affairs and education within the health science industry. She has her BSc from Queen's. She went on to get her ND from CCNM in 2012, and she is committed to advancing naturopathic medicine, and her work extends globally through her active participation in the World Naturopathic Federation's Antimicrobial Research Committee. That I did not know. Oh, it's very hot. Jen Vasey in my hometown as the CEO of Metabolic Balance Canada and a registered holistic nutritionist. Jen, you bring over a decade of clinical experience combined with nearly 20 years in the wellness and personalized nutrition arena. Today, you provide mentorship to coaches and practitioners throughout Canada and internationally, equipping them with tools to deliver effective nutrition programs through the metabolic balance system. Dr. Jax and Jen, I'm going to let you, Dr. Jax, let us know what the topic is today. We've read about it, but let's hear a little bit and launch right into it. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Julia. I'll share my screen and get this up for you guys, and we'll get right into it because it is so exciting for me to be here. Some of those of you who know me know I'm really passionate about the microbiome, and today I get to talk to you about two things that I'm also really passionate about. It's not just the microbiome, but also Metabolic Balance Program, and we're going to talk about how the program really taps into some of these really physiologically important constituents and really at our leading edge. So the science around the microbiome and the science around mitochondria are really, I would say, emerging. There's a lot that we know, but it's like one of those, I think it's the Red Hot Chili Peppers, like the more you know, the less you know. It's like that song, that cliche. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys about this. I'm very passionate, and I'm really excited to have Jen with us today. Jen Vasey, I'm grateful for her and Vera. They were the ones who really kind of shepherded me on my journey, me and my husband. You'll see a little bit about that later on. I'm not going to go too much into, the testimonials. I know Jen's got a lot of that for you, but I'm going to insert my bits and pieces. And so Jen, I'll maybe let you have a word and just introduce yourself as the CEO for Metabolic Balance Canada.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Jacqueline Cooper, and thank you, Julia. We're just so thrilled to be here. I actually attended IHN myself well over a decade ago on campus, and it was one of my most favorite experiences. And like Julia mentioned, I've been in the wellness space for about 20 years now and really advanced forward with the Metabolic Balance Program in the last 5. So I'm excited to really dive into such an important topic. And then at the end, we'll talk a little bit more about just how this topic relates so well to the nutrition plans that we offer for clients. So yeah, let's dive right in. Thank you so much.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay. So today, just to do a quick overview, we're going to talk a lot about the mitochondria and the microbiota. So microbiota being just another word for microbiome. It's kind of more the current word, I would say. Microbiome has a reference to all the genes, and microbiota is really just all the organisms that we know are so, so important. So we're going to talk about how those two important facets of our health are interrelated. And then we're going to get into talking about, how things are problematic, like when things go wrong with our mitochondria and our microbiome, how that affects our health and why. And then the links to blood sugar support. This is where there's a lot of, I'm going to say overlap with the Metabolic Balance program. So this is all really giving you the physiological foundation as to why the Metabolic Balance program works so well. And then that last part, that structured support for success, that's where we'll really speak to the program and how it interfaces with these important facets of physiology and why so many people see such dramatic success, even when they've often tried numerous other diet lifestyle approaches. So let's get right into it. So mitochondria and the microbiota. What do I mean by crosstalk? Well, I mean that the two have a huge amount of influence on one another. And this is one of the key areas of emerging science that is just exploding. And we're learning more and more literally every day about both kind of respectively, but then also the interaction between the two. And so we're seeing that both mitochondria and our microbiota touch all the different organs and systems in our body. Like they are really, we think about, all of us are passionate about holistic health, and these two, we're going to call them systems, so to speak, are really at the crux of holistic approach to how we think about health, because there is not a facet of our health that either of these don't touch. Our mitochondria, if we think about, they are the powerhouse of our cells. So getting right down to the cellular level, every cell has our mitochondria and relies on those to produce ATP and drive the energy that's required for all of the different functions. And so where this really comes into play when we think about health on more of like our scale of, what's going on with our health, like, of course, the cellular health is important, but we think about metabolic health. If our mitochondria are not healthy, we can't be healthy from a metabolic perspective. Because if the mitochondria are dysfunctional, if they're sluggish, if they can't process that energy in the cell, actually will start to become insulin resistant. And this can be mitochondrial dysfunction, a driver or contributor to insulin resistance, because if it can't process the glucose that's coming in, it's going to start to push back. And so then you start to see that ripple out. And then the cell, if the mitochondria can't process the glucose, then the cell starts to say, okay, no more glucose right now. So we see that insulin resistant, how it can start at a very cellular level and centered on mitochondrial function. I like this quote, and it talks about being at the center of energy metabolism. It is just intuitive that the mitochondria are going to have a huge role in the pathogenesis of disease with respect to metabolic syndrome and diseases of metabolism like obesity, type 2 diabetes. So mitochondria fundamental in the role of these metabolic diseases that we see becoming ever increasingly common in our society, and not just in Canada, hugely in Canada, but globally. Like this is the metabolic epidemic is really a global problem. So if we recognize that our mitochondria are a really important part of the solution, how do we keep them happy? Well, there's a whole host of different things we can do. And this is a great link here, this reference by a fellow ND of mine, Dr. Joseph Pizzorno, that really gets into the wide range of nutrients and all of the things that contribute to mitochondrial health. But I wanted to just take a quick snapshot of some of the big factors that we know really play an important role. CoQ10, I'm sure that that was maybe one of the first things that popped into many of your minds because it's probably the nutrient we tend to think about in association with mitochondrial health the most. Really, really important when we think about anyone who might be on a statin. So if you have clients in the future who are taking statins, we absolutely need them to be on CoQ10 because statins will interrupt that pathway where the body produces its own CoQ10, and a lack of CoQ10 absolutely can cause dysfunction in our mitochondria and then start some of that metabolic issue or contribute to already existing issues. Second that I want to highlight is glutathione. Glutathione is another key element. And part of the reason for that is because of the sensitivity that mitochondria have to toxins. So when we have a lot of toxin exposure, as we do, we know in our current world, there's a lot of chemicals, lots of toxicity that we're exposed to that can often deplete our glutathione. So ensuring that we have robust amount of glutathione, particularly as we age, because we can see in the elderly population that sometimes glutathione deficiencies is more common. This is something we can test for in a blood test. We can test levels of glutathione, and that helps to buffer and mitigate some of that toxin exposure. But of course, anything we can do to reduce our toxin load is huge. And then finally, exercise. So building muscle mass is one of the best things we can do to support robust numbers and function of our mitochondria. And there's lots of good, I would say, awareness right now. It's been, I think, certainly, I know that I'm hearing more and more in the last couple of years about, particularly for women, we've talked a lot about bone density, especially as we age, but also muscle mass, the focus on muscle. So whatever we were to do, whether it's some, whatever approach is right for you, but with weights and encouraging clients to make sure that if they're exercising, that they're not just doing, aerobic, but really focusing on that muscle building and maintenance. And so then let's turn to the microbiota. So we look at our microbiota. It is so important and it touches our health in so many ways. It's actually being sometimes referred to now as almost its own organ. If you were to actually condense all of the microbiota through our body, even just in the gut, it would actually weigh almost as much as the liver. So it really is, spread out. It's almost like a second skin on all of our membranes, our skin, our mucosal membranes, whether that's our gut, our lungs, anywhere we have a mucosal membrane, we have our microbiota. And if our microbiota is unhealthy or unbalanced, then we're in a state of dysbiosis. And dysbiosis causes all kinds of problems through the body because it really wreaks havoc, driving inflammation, as well as even stress chemistry. So balancing our microbiota is huge. And one of the things that we talk about when we think about emerging research, I say it's connected to all kinds of things. There's a huge amount of recognition that is starting to develop for the role of the microbiota with respect to metabolism. And so some of the ways that we see the microbiota influencing our body's metabolism is through the production of bile, and so therefore our absorption or excretion of fats. We'll talk about that a little bit more in detail in a bit, but then also influencing our immune system. So our immune system, when we are inflamed, we are less likely to be successful in maintaining a healthy weight. We can often see inflammation as an obstacle for people being able to shed weight. It can also drive water weight and that kind of water retention. A lot of times, talk about, women particularly can complain about some of that, wiggly arms. They'll say, I want to, get rid of this. And that's not necessarily fat. A lot of times when I had patients that would kind of complain about that, we talk about how that was lymphatic congestion. It was water retention, because if we're toxic, if we're inflamed, we tend to hold water as part of our kind of body's coping mechanism. So lots and lots of ways that the microbiota influence metabolism, and we're just starting to understand some of the mechanisms of action, but we know that it is key. And so another quote here, the microbiota interacts with host cells in particular, which we want to highlight by influencing and intermingling with the mitochondrial activities. So again, these are two really important systems on their own, and they are also having a lot of interaction. So we want to make sure that both are happy. And so part of how we see the microbiota actually influencing mitochondrial activity is, remember I told you the mitochondria really sensitive to toxins? Well, one of the things that happens when we're dysbiotic, if we've got bad bugs, a lot of bad bugs in our gut, those problematic bugs will actually produce toxins. So it's not just about like using clean body, care products or avoiding pesticides in our foods and our lawns and things like that, but actually maintaining a healthy gut microbiome is important because that reduces our toxic load. Because the problematic bugs, they produce toxins that don't just stay in the gut and get eliminated, they pass through into our bloodstream, even across our blood-brain barrier, and can really, again, drive that inflammation and toxic load. So we think about our guts like a garden, and there's lots of ways that we can keep our gut and gut microbiome happy. These are some of them. Obviously, dietary fiber is huge. Fiber is key. Having lots of plant diversity in the diet is one of the most protective things that we can do to optimize the microbiome, particularly the microbiome in the large intestine. And this is one of the things when we look at the metabolic balance. We're not going to go into the programming in detail of showcasing, diet plans, but I can speak to one of the things I was really impressed with is the emphasis on a rich plant-based diet and one of diversity. As humans, we get so caught up, I would say, in our habits. And that was a real emphasis that I thought was so in line with my values as an ND and what I was encouraging patients to do of, really rotating food, diversity in the plants that we're eating. Because not only is that good for our immune system to see that change, but also all the different plants have different nutrients. And that's a key part in the emphasis. So we look at the dysfunction. I'm going to blitz through these quickly, but I want to just hammer home how these things are connected, because I mentioned dysbiosis driving inflammation, but it also drives stress chemistry. And stress chemistry, which Lord knows we have enough things to be stressed about in life. We don't need nasty bugs in our gut adding to the issues. And so again, breaking this loop is really, really key. And so when we think about the mitochondria, they actually have a part of how they have a role to play is that if we have a lot of inflammation, that's going to cause mitochondrial dysregulation, as is that dysbiosis because of the toxicity. We also see that when we have our mitochondria is dysfunctional, that leads to oxidative stress, because if they're not healthy, they start to dump those toxins in and they drive oxidative stress, which then contributes. So there's a lot of arrows, a lot going on here. The big key takeaway is all of these things are so interconnected. So it's important to take that holistic lens and support our mitochondria, support our gut health. And what we'll see is that by we can start to break some of these loops that really can be part of why people sometimes struggle to get better. They might be doing certain things, having a healthy life, but if you're not tackling some of these elements, that can perpetually drive the loop. Okay, so one of the other things I want to highlight is vitamin D. Now, we're going into summer months. It's beautiful out here, at least in Toronto. So we can get complacent with our vitamin D because we think, oh, it's the sunshine vitamin. We're getting lots of sun exposure. I will tell you from years of testing, oftentimes, even at the end of summer, for people that have nice, deep, rich tans, we would test their vitamin D levels and they would still be low. So not a good time to be complacent. We want to still maintain, and as always, I always say test, don't guess. And really, really important to make sure that we're in those upper echelons of the healthy levels. So looking at closer to that 200 nanomoles per liter, because sometimes what we see too is that people have not only vitamin D deficiency, but dysfunction of their receptors. So having really healthy, robust, not just being just over the healthy limit, but being at that higher end of the healthy limit is really important. It can help support health in a major way and reduce inflammation and really support the key elements that we're talking about, like the gut microbiome, the gut lining, as well as our mitochondria. And so mitophagy, you guys might be hearing more and more about this. I think that mitophagy is maybe not as well of a known term, but certainly autophagy is. And if you've heard a lot of talk about, the fasting mimicking diets, or, fasting, part of the reason that people are doing fasting or FDM, fasting, diet mimicking patterns, is because they want to capitalize on this aspect of autophagy, where the body consumes its own tissues. And that maybe sounds like the body consuming its own tissues, like, is that really a good thing? Yes, because it's part of the natural cleanup process that happens. So even when we look at, in the metabolic balance plan, it's not just about what they're eating, but it's about advising people on how to eat and the time frames and taking the breaks. Because when we give our body breaks, it really supports metabolic health. So again, one of the things that I want to emphasize that as you go through is that the metabolic balance program really keys into a lot of these core physiological processes to optimize. And the timing of eating and spacing out meals and then having long breaks over the evening fast is really part of why that's so important, is because it starts to tap in to, these cellular breaks and breakdown. And from a physiological perspective, when we think about with respect to gut health, it's also so important to take those breaks, because when we don't eat, the small intestine, the movement is really fast. But every time we eat, what will happen is you'll actually stop, you'll pause that fast movement. And if we're eating and grazing and snacking and we slow that movement, throughout the day on a regular basis, that in itself can be something that opens the door to dysbiosis, because it allows some of those fermenting bacteria lower in the gut that should be staying lower in the gut to start to creep up. So when we think about SIBO, we've heard that a lot, I'm sure, many of us. SIBO, that can be that slow compromised motility, can be a key part. So this is again where the structured success that we'll talk about later, it's all not just about what we're eating, but how we're eating. Okay, so if we move through and looking at some of the other things that can prevent mitochondrial damage and dysfunction, medications obviously can be very important and are great to be used, in small doses as needed. But it is important to recognize that there are a lot of medications that we know damage the mitochondria. And there's research and papers that are absolutely have proven this. So we want to be mindful. And this is where, as we help clients to reduce inflammation, part of the hope is that then their reliance and need for some of these anti-inflammatories, pain medications, is also reduced. And as I mentioned, one of the big ones, which is one of the most commonly prescribed drugs that people are on long-term, is statins. Statins being to help them reduce cholesterol, but it does interrupt that CoQ10. So you are doing a great service to anyone who's on a statin to ensure that they're taking CoQ10 as a supplement. Really important in protecting that mitochondrial health. Again, I mentioned here when we talk about the microbiota and how it relates to some of the dysfunction, that LPS is a really key part, not only for damaging mitochondria, but also can contribute to that inflammation in the body that then wreaks havoc on other systems and can contribute to some of the metabolic dysfunction. And we're seeing, especially with obesity and type 2 diabetes, there is absolutely a direct link. And so some of that, is obviously facilitated, that dysfunction, that dysbiosis is contributed. We mentioned some of the things: stress, chemistry, inflammation, all of those can drive it, but there's a lot of other things. Antibiotics, when we think about a drug perspective, antibiotics are the #1 disruptor for the microbiome, particularly the small intestine, which is where all the gut immune activity happens. And of course, we want to use antibiotics as appropriate, but we do want to minimize our exposure when possible, specifically in our food. And if we're eating conventional meats that are not raised antibiotic free, then we are getting that dose. And so Julia mentioned my work with the AMR, Antimicrobial Resistance Committee. It's a passionate thing for us because, unfortunately, because of overuse, we are seeing a huge amount of antibiotic resistance developing. So minimizing at very least for sure in our foods as much as possible, but then also, pesticides. Pesticides are another huge one. So if we can look at the, dirty dozen, the clean 15, minimize as much as possible, this will go a long way to helping our microbiome. Now, we can't do much about C-sections and whether we were breastfed or not, for our clients, like it is what it is. Thank God that we have, the miracle of modern day science available to us, but we can do a lot of things to help support the gut. And I think this is important to mention because a C-section birth or not being breastfed can absolutely open the door to being metabolically compromised via the implications of a microbiome. But again, we also have probiotics and other things, as we'll see. So I just want to highlight two more things. Some of the research that is emerging and being done. This was a really cool study that was done on mice where they showed non-caloric artificial sweeteners and how those sweeteners, the exposure to those sweeteners caused the mice to gain weight and develop glucose intolerance. And they suspected it was because of the alterations to the gut microbiome. And so what did they do? They did a transplant of that microbiome from those now obese mice into healthy weighted mice. And they found that those mice then, without any exposure to the caloric sweeteners, just having that fecal transplant, they ended up becoming also obese. So they not only became obese and gained weight, but they showed that same glucose intolerant, confirming that that was the absolute mechanism of action for why the sweeteners induced the weight gain and the glucose intolerance via the changes to the microbiome. So this can be a great thing to lead on. Of course, it's an animal study, but it just shows if you've got individuals, clients that are consuming some of those non-caloric sweeteners, a lot of those, they have chemicals and they do a fallout. So they can be counterproductive and things that we want to maybe really think about. The other thing, there's a lot of science coming with respect to obesogens. And so this is just some of the common household places that we see them, definitely in plastics, lots of cleaning, some of the Teflons, pesticides, and there's again emerging science on these chemicals and their disruption of metabolism through a host of different mechanisms. So lots of things to think about. And so when we think about like, how do we support the body, the gut, one of the things, of course, is thinking about probiotics. Now, I do often hear, what about prebiotics? Well, if we think about prebiotics and probiotics, they have very different functions. I always say the probiotics are like the flowers, where the prebiotics are like the fertilizer. It's the food that feeds the flower. So two different entities that we need both to optimize. The other thing is that probiotics are really going to help support the small intestine, whereas prebiotics and fibers really help support the microbiome in the large intestine. So different abilities. Now, when thinking about choosing a probiotic, I often recommend considering avoiding the enteric coating options because, again, those ones are not going to deliver the same impact for your clients because they will miss the small intestine. And for the vast majority of people, if we're thinking about the gut, brain, gut, immune, all of these big body results, we want to make sure that we have the small intestine being activated. Now, I'm going to fly through these pretty quickly, but I did just want to share with you and to just showcase that, I showed the rat study and that's some of the emerging science, but we also have studies done in humans, specifically with probiotics, showing that certain strains of probiotics given in certain doses can, without any changes to diet or lifestyle, have shown to induce weight loss. And so again, just confirming the importance of the microbiome. And so this is a Promogen study. So this is it was done over 6 months. And what they showed was that individuals lost weight. And what they found was that women, I say women because they actually did a sub-study after, which is really nice because a lot of times studies don't include women. And what we know is that there's a lot of focus on perimenopause and menopause right now, and weight gain and increased cholesterol are two things that we do see happening a lot for women. And the women in the study that were over 50 who had high cholesterol, they actually lost the most. So over 50, in high cholesterol lost 7 pounds over the course of 6 months without any changes to diet or lifestyle. And what they also saw was that there was a reduction of their cholesterol by taking these 4 strains in a dose of 50 billion. They actually were then able to repeat it, and they did a 9-month study, and they saw that that pattern continued, and people continued to lose weight as they were on it. So this is not a silver bullet. It's a slow and steady. It's not going to get you, dropping, 15 pounds in a couple of weeks to feel good for your beach vacation. This is a very slow and steady. It's a foundational, but still very exciting because it just showcases the role of, by just influencing the microbiome, not changing diet lifestyle, how much that does play a role. However, when we're looking, I think most people that you are going to be working with are going to want to see, a greater weight loss in a period of time. This is an important component, but that's again where something like metabolic balance comes in, because you do see that drop in weight where you can see that, loss of 15, 20 pounds in the first 2 to 3 weeks that get people feeling energized and also committed. And I know Jen's going to share some stories later, but it's about the power of synergy of taking the optimal foundation of the microbiome, but then pairing it with those powerful diet lifestyle changes that we see in the metabolic balance program. This is just it's always my pet peeve, so I always want to highlight it. It's so important. I put here, these are the strains that were in the study. And a lot of times people, they just read Lactobacillus acidophilus, they just read the species, and then they look for other products, but you will not get the same results, because when we always want to look at what's the exact strain. So don't just look at the species when you're looking at research, look at the species and the strain. That's my tip, because it is as different as comparing different dogs, right? We don't want to say all Lactobacillus acidophilus is the same. It'd be like saying that these two guys are the same, and there's only one of them that's going to pull a sled. So that's my just kind of expert tip, because I see practitioners, I see gastroenterologists that are, supposed experts on podcasts interchanging species and strain, and it's so important. We want to get this right. So when you look at research, make sure that it's actually the exact strains that were used in the research that are in the products. Okay, let's kind of pivot now to regulating blood sugar. So as we know, blood sugar is so important. And I think it's amazing, seeing the access that we have to glucose monitors, different biometrics through all kinds of things that can be really, really powerful. And blood sugar is so important, not just to managing weight, but for health. Of course, diabetes is key. We see it on the rise. But while there's over 3 million people in Canada living with diabetes, there's another 6% of the population that are deemed pre-diabetic without really getting much support. And not only the 6% that are pre-diabetic, but I would say that there is a whole host of other individuals that they're not in the pre-diabetic stage yet, but their blood sugar is chronically too high for their age. What do I mean by that? When you take somebody who is in their 20s and their HbA1c which is showcasing how their blood sugar has been managed over 90 days, is creeping up. It might not be in the pre-diabetic stage yet, but if it's anywhere close to that higher end, that is a problem. And we as practitioners are seeing that more and more, that people of younger ages have poorly controlled blood sugar. And so they might not be diabetic, they might not be pre-diabetic, but they are well on their way. So as much as we're seeing an issue and an explosion of diabetes and poor blood sugar, I think that is something, unfortunately, as a pattern, we are likely to see continue, especially as we see kind of the kids of today growing up. We actually have generations that are less healthy. We've unfortunately had a flip where the explosion of chronic disease, it's starting to infiltrate younger and younger ages. Metabolic syndrome, which was something that was a middle-aged and elderly disease, we're seeing it in kids. It's scary. And so managing blood sugar is huge. And part and parcel, like when we look at what's going on, so much of what happens is it starts with the cell. And if we understand what's happening with the cell, then we can interrupt and really be truly proactive and preventative. And so one thing that I want to highlight is the presence of insulin. So insulin is what signals the cell to pull in glucose. And so managing how much glucose is in the blood, the blood sugar, is of huge importance, but we don't want to forget about insulin. And we want to really make sure that we do not have high levels of insulin. Because when we have high levels of insulin over time, which happens as we're trying to drive that blood sugar into the cell, our body stops listening. And what's also problematic about having high levels of insulin is that insulin interrupts the fat burn. So when we have high insulin levels, we are interrupting our body's ability to burn fat, as well as interrupting a whole bunch of other factors. And this is one of the things that is really key about metabolic balance makes it different, I would say, from a lot of other kind of programs or dietary recommendations, is it really keys in on insulin levels, not just the blood sugar, not just calories. It's one of the important facets is really helping to drop the insulin levels. And this is why you'll see that as part of the programming, it's not okay to just have a black coffee. If you're going to have a black coffee, a black tea, there might not be any calories in it, but you still keep that within your mealtime. There's no calories. You might be saying there's no sugar in it. Why can't I do it? It's not going to disrupt my blood sugar. Sure, it's not going to disrupt your blood sugar, but it's going to influence your insulin. And so by spiking insulin, we start to then interrupt these important metabolic balances, namely, especially fat burn, as well as causing rises in cortisol, rises in cholesterol, a whole bunch of other things. So this is a big facet of what is different about the program. Same thing with even a flavored bubbly water. Right? We can have water, no problem, but something that's flavored, even if it's 0 calories, can trigger an insulin response. So this is part of the kind of well thought out comprehension that you see in the Metabolic Balance program. So speaking of which, so back to blood sugar. So it's noted on the insulin, but let's go back to blood sugar itself. So I mentioned HbA1c. HbA1c is, again, a blood test. It's essentially looking at how coated are your red blood cells in sugar. And that's something that you can get done at your doctor, but something, as I mentioned, we have access to, and amazing, is we've got a lot of data that we can get with the different gadgets these days, particularly how they sync with our iPhones. And continuous blood glucose monitors are amazing because they can show in real time the power of what you're eating or how you're moving and what you're doing and how it's influencing your blood sugar. So thanks to my hubby, Dave, for being willing to share his data. But this is his data on metabolic balance. So as you can see here, because I'm such a science geek, so I wanted to do a control and see what it was like before. We realized it was very problematic. So he found out that he was diabetic, and it was 100% before starting the Metabolic Balance program. It was 100% outside the green. So he wasn't touching the green, even when he was fasting, even when he was sleeping, never touching the green zone. This is day 1 of phase 2. So phase 1 is 2 days. It's a cleanse, and it's a really important part of that has actually implications for the microbiome and helping to reduce inflammation. I'm not going to dwell on that, but what I want to emphasize is that day 1 of phase 2 is really day 3 of the Metabolic Balance program. Look at the shift. So he was, for 2 days, did not touch, and he wasn't eating crazy inappropriate things. He was just eating his normal day-to-day diet. But on day 3 of being on the Metabolic Balance program, he was already significantly lower and in the green. And so here's day 5, here's day 8, and you can see, still, he's got his spikes, but unbelievable from a comparison to where he was at from starting. By the end of the 2-week sensor, so remember he did 2 days where he was eating his normal diet, and he was, for those 2 days, 0% of the time in the green. By the end of the 2-week sensor, so 2 days of regular, 0%, and then for the remaining 12 days of the sensor was his first 12 days of metabolic balance. By the end of the 14 days, 14 of those days, 60% in the green. I was blown away. So when I talk about being passionate about this program, this is one of the main reasons why. This was one of my first exposure from a personal perspective, was seeing this without any, I should be very explicit, because we all know it takes time to get in to see our doctors. So he had not seen his doctor yet. He had no interventions other than the metabolic balance program. And this was the results in the first 2 weeks, not even 2 weeks, 12 days. So this is what got me so passionate. And the other thing about it was the fact of the matter that it's all about balance. Like it's in its name, metabolic balance, but it's truly all about balance. Because one of the things I recognized while doing it at the same time was that I was actually having low blood sugar events. And some of that low erratic, that's part of what I'm talking about, of someone who has a very normal HbA1c, but was already showing some signs of erratic blood sugar by having too low drops. And what you saw here is that I went from, in the first week of wearing the sensor, so again, the first 2 days of just doing normal life, and then 5 days into the program, I had 19 low blood sugar alerts. And then in the second week of the sensor, I'm only 3. And by the time I was in the second week of the metabolic balance program, so I had zero for the front end. So it really, again, from a blood sugar perspective, this data blew me away. The other thing that was a little bit newer was I saw the results from another individual who I had run through it. And I'm going to put together a slide, but I didn't get it in time for this. But speaking to the insulin, their insulin was off the charts. Like off the charts. And within 16 days, their first, phase 1 and phase 2, they went back to their ND, and their ND said, "What are you doing? Because this is unbelievable." She knew that they were doing the metabolic balance. She was actually saying, like, "I can't believe this. Like, are you doing anything else?" I was like, "Nope, this is the program. There's nothing else changed." She's like, "Stay on it, keep going." She's like, "I've never seen insulin re-regulate so fast." So that's my passion, really driven around the blood sugar element. But also I do want to highlight, it's not just, my anecdotes, and you're going to hear more exciting anecdotes from Jen, but it's also the science, because there is moving into, talking about some of the structure. And I'm just going to skip ahead here because I want to really highlight the research. But these are some of the reasons I think that are important, but we can send you guys out these slides. But I want to highlight the research where they've done a clinical trial and they've looked at how the metabolic balance program compares to other well-known comparable programs. Weight Watchers probably being one of the most kind of well-known on the topic. And look at how dramatically the success of the metabolic balance participants are compared. And so what they were looking at here is they wanted to see, that at least 50% of the individuals participating were able to reduce their body weight. And I lost my note there, but I believe it was between 5 to 10%. Let me go back. I think I skipped over too many slides, but it was 62%. So you need to have that 50% mark, and it was over 62% compared to the Weight Watchers, which is only 31. So double the amount of success. And when we look at the structured part, what I want to emphasize is I mentioned to you guys that it's not just about what they eat and that using the blood work to identify nutrient deficiencies, but then also giving structure to help success. And so there's rules. There's 8 rules, and some of it has to do with water intake. Some of it has to do with the timing and spacing. Some of it has to do with, starting the meals with protein, because again, that influences the insulin. But there's these structured rules and guidance, I would really say, that help shape a new, healthy, transformative lifestyle. And what you see here is that those who followed the rules, so those who followed, 1 to 2 of the rules, they lost 3% of their initial weight in the time period. But if you go up, increased compliance with the rules with increased weight loss. And those that were falling 7 to 8%, they lost 17% of their initial weight, which is just phenomenal. So again, 70% of their body weight, and it's really, really impressive. And I think what I've seen consistently for myself, my husband, those that I've put on it, is that there's a significant amount of weight lost in those first 2 weeks, which is so important because it's so encouraging. And I think it's really a big part of the success that keep people coming back and, sticking with it, is that initial success. So I want to, not dwell on some of the takeaways, but kind of pass it over here to Jen so she can tell you a little bit more about the success that she's seen, and also some of the important information you might need to know about how to actually get certified. And if you're excited and we've sparked your interest, like what you can do from here so that you can be primed to help your clients, because it is such a hard grind. I know in clinical practice, it's so hard to, help people. Weight can be really, really tricky and stubborn, and the success that you're going to be able to provide people through the structure program, it gives me goosebumps. So without ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Jen.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh, that was so informative. And I know all of us here as, wellness practitioners, we know the importance of insulin regulation and, stable blood sugars. And it's really one of the key focuses that I focus on when it comes to weight management, right, is going to be stable blood sugars, hormonal balance, of course, by focusing on the master hormone, which is insulin, and of course, reducing inflammation. So really, really great topic. So now I do want to dive in a little bit more, as Dr. Jack had mentioned that she uses metabolic balance in her practice. We have a lot of NDs and, of course, a ton of nutritionists and just wellness practitioners who are really highly successfully using metabolic balance in their practice. So I'm going to dive right into what it looks like to become certified. Of course, the first step is that you do need to have a prerequisite, which fortunately all of us here do. But that's really important for us to make sure that the metabolic balance program is only delivered through accredited professionals. So it's very important that it is delivered through people who have obtained the knowledge and the ability to deliver the program, which each of you have, which is wonderful. So we'll skip over to step number 2, which is enrolling to become a coach. So we're very excited. We do have something that is super exclusive just to IHN, which I will touch on shortly when it comes to enrollment, and something that's going to be a little extra special for you. So once you do enroll to become a coach, the first step, and we'll move over to the next one, is going to be diving right into the training. So the first step of the training you're going to dive into is the theoretical part of the training. So Dr. Jack is actually our educator of the theoretical part of the training of the program. So part of what she touched on is going to be in the training, but there is 16 lessons. So there's 16 modules. Again, topics will include blood sugar regulation, metabolic syndrome, allergies, mental barriers. There's so much into the program. And I think it's really important to touch on the science behind how the program was developed, which was over 25 years ago by Dr. Wolf, fun fact, in Germany. So really, it's an incredible retention of education. I do find that anyone who goes through it, they love the training. They love hearing Dr. Wolf's story and how he developed the program, because he was healing those in his practice who had metabolic syndrome, and he was healing them with the power of nutrition. So what he found is that when he would see what was happening in their chemistry by running their labs, imbalances, deficiencies, hormones, glucose levels, inflammatory marker, he was actually able to heal with the right nutrients, the right ratios of nutrients. And this is how he developed the program. And fast forward to today, many people do use the program for weight management. However, that being said, it's still widely used by practitioners to heal metabolic syndrome. So you'll go through the theoretical part of the training first to really understand the foundation of metabolic balance and how it was developed. From there, we're going to move you over to the practical part of the training. And this is where things really get exciting, because this is how you learn how to use the back end. It's very, very user-friendly. So this is how you're going to learn how to actually generate meal plans. The thing that I will let you know that levels up your credibility the most is the fact that we run labs on every single one of your clients. And so even though it can go beyond our scope of practice as nutritionists, to issue rec forms, we actually take care of that for you. So we have our physician on staff. Our physician will sign off on the requisition form that you give to your client. You do get access to the portal to retrieve the results, and then you retrieve those client results along with an intake form, just of like their medical health history, any medications, allergies, height, weight, all of the things that we're going to need. And then you input all of this information into our database that gets sent to our medical team of doctors in Germany, and they are the ones who create the tailored plan. So no two plans are ever the same. This is what makes Metabolic Balance so unique, but this is what gives you that tangible offer. You have a full program to offer. You're going to give your client a requisition form. They are going to get a custom nutrition plan that was made just for them. You're going to coach them through the steps of how to follow the plan, how to keep them accountable. And you can do all of that by just entering the information in a few minutes into our portal. So that part is done for you. And I think we all know what it's like to spend hours and hours researching and doing things for clients. That part is done for you, so you can actually redirect your focus on what you do best, which is really using your knowledge to support your client through their health and wellness journey and the lifestyle changes. So the practical part is where you learn how to enter and generate meal plans, and then you would also, of course, enter your own, and so that you can experience it for yourself. And then the last part of the training is the Build Your Business training. So I will tell you, after the theoretical and the practical training, you are a certified coach. If you do require the business training, it is recommended, but it is optional. And this is where we walk you through the proven system for success. And so we walk you through exactly how to launch your business, how to onboard clients. I will tell you from personal experience, I've run almost 1,000 clients through the Metabolic Balance program, and every single one of them was a referral. Every single one of them. It is a very results-driven program. And when you offer such a results-driven program, results equal referrals, and then referrals equal the growth of your business. So you will have access to the business training as well. I think it's really important to cover this because we do get a lot of questions on what the reality is on an expected income. We have several coaches who run six-figure or even multi-six-figure businesses just by offering Metabolic Balance. We also have a lot of practitioners who offer it as one service, one of several services. So I will run through the expected income with you. So you can see here, this really simply breaks it down. So the cost of the plan is $400 and the cost of the blood work is $160. Okay, so the cost to you to generate a custom meal plan with blood work is $560. The minimum charge requirement, so that we never discount the program or discount just the credibility and the value of the program, the minimum is $11.99. I will tell you, almost every coach charges the average charge, like myself, of $14.99. So you package up your program as $14.99. And again, the value to the client when they're getting something so personalized that includes their blood work, includes their plan, it includes coaching from you, it includes accountability check-ins. There's so much that you can include. We include recipe books, everything they could possibly need. The value far exceeds the investment. The thing that I tell my clients every single time is at the end of our time together, at the end of the program, you will never ever feel like you should try something else. You'll never feel, is there another program, something else? You will be so well educated and you will always know what to do. If you veer a little off track, you go on vacation, that's understandable, but you'll have all of the principles, you'll have your plan, you will know exactly how to ground yourself and get yourself back on track. And it's that delivery of education that's so important. This is not, we want people who are independently healthy. So this is not a business model that's based on reoccurring revenue where they have to keep buying your products, your supplements, your shakes, things like that. Not at all. This is true holistic healing in a place where we deliver it through education. And so I think that's the most important. So your profit margin based on the average charge works out to be $939 per client. So if we move over here, I will mention that every sixth plan is free. So this is just kind of a bonus to you that every sixth plan that you enter per month is a free plan. So you do get that, which is a value of $400. And this goes for 6, 12, 18, 24, 30. I've entered over 40 plans in a month. So that's just kind of a bonus as well. So I'm going to break it down a little further for you. On average, most people will onboard anywhere from 2 up to 5 clients per week. So 2 to 5 clients per week. If we hop over to the average charge, is going to be anywhere from around 1,800 to 4,600 per week. On a monthly basis, our coaches are earning anywhere from around that 5 to 18,000. Even, for some it can be above that, but I'd say that that is a fair average. We move over to the next one. I'm going to break it down a little bit further into what's like very, very realistic. So a realistic, highly attainable average would be 12 plans per month. 12 plans is great. Your 6th is free, so you get 2 free plans. This can be done with a weekly commitment of about 6 to 8 hours. So 6 to 8 hours per week would be your commitment, which includes doing initial consultations, so onboarding your clients, doing a few follow-ups, some emails, potentially even creating some content for social media. In and around, you should be able to fall into that 6 to 8 hours per week. If you're charging the average plus your bonus plan and you're selling 12 plans per month, it works out to be just over 12,000 a month. So that's 144,000 a year. This is part-time hours. Working virtually. I would say almost all of our practitioners work virtually. If you have an in-person practice, that's wonderful, but you certainly don't have to, and it gives you the opportunity to work with clients all over, which is really helpful. And again, for several of our practitioners, this income is in addition to their existing business, where for others, they run their business solely using metabolic balance. So that is a very realistic expectation. And of course, it does get better. This for me, this was the most rewarding piece. And I just talk here, not only are you doing the work that you love and you're earning a comfortable living, but the most important part is that the impact that you're making on other people's lives. The just what fuels your soul and gets you so lit up and so excited when you focus on truly helping. The income comes. That's wonderful. And that's great that you can, I love that our coaches can have, really successful businesses and thriving lives, and they can afford to take their families on vacations and things like that. But that all comes at the focus of truly helping people. And I remember what it's like to be focused in doing the things that I love and helping others, but really not being able to get ahead because I was doing hourly sessions. I was charging a nominal hourly fee. I was only doing so many hour sessions per week, and it was just challenging to get ahead. So when you can combine them together, when you can make such an impactful difference and grow a lucrative business, it really is the most rewarding. And you know that your business is only growing to that level because of how many people you're helping. So it's just such a win-win situation. Okay, so I do want to share a few success stories with you here. These are some personal clients of mine. So the first client here, like myself, is a client who has PCOS. And so she came to me, as you know, many clients with hormonal conditions. Most people with PCOS, of course, have insulin resistance. And so when she came to me, she had literally tried everything. As you can imagine, several clients come to you, they've tried it all, and she was just absolutely blown away with her results. And that is a picture of her on vacation. This was a celebratory vacation for her because she was just so thrilled with her results and just felt so much better. The second photo that you see here, oh my goodness. Every time I see, I just get like emotional with this one because this wasn't about weight loss. This wasn't about body image. This was about changing her quality of life, her complete quality of life, who she was as a parent to her children, a partner to her spouse, everything that was elevated in her life because of metabolic balance, because of the program, because of the lifestyle changes that she committed to. It just changed her whole world. It changed her life. And so she was just such an amazing client to work with. And I do have just a couple more. On the next slide, you'll see here another client here on the left, an amazing client who, when she came to me, like several clients will come to you, she came to me with, oh my gosh, like how did this happen? I gained, like it just kind of feels like it was just so gradual. And before she knew it, she was, at that point, she had gained over 50 pounds and she lost almost 70, which was incredible. And then the other client over here is actually one of my closest friends' mom. And my favorite story with her, she lost 90 pounds on the program. And my friend messaged me and said, I have never seen my mom jump in the pool. And she ran and jumped in the pool with her granddaughter. And again, I could go on and on with these stories, but the biggest thing and the biggest impact we're making is their quality of life, their longevity, just what the program does for their present and for their future, which is amazing. This is one of our incredible coaches, Melissa. Melissa's a great a great example of someone who has a multi-six-figure business and who runs only metabolic balance. She has been a coach with us for over a decade now, and she's incredible. So I really love, she has hundreds and hundreds of success stories, but this is a great example of a coach with her client. And I just love they're both fitting in the pants. They're each in one leg, which is awesome. Yeah.
It took me a second. I didn't see it.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, which was a really fun picture for sure. Yeah. And then so you can see here, we did pop in a couple of our coach testimonials, and we have lots that we're able to share with you. You can reach out to us, but just how metabolic balance not only transformed their clients' lives, but transformed their practice. Barb has been with us for a long time. Melanie has been with us since day one. She actually does have in-person and virtual practice. Laura had her own personal transformation with metabolic balance that was so impactful that now she has a very, very busy practice. People are waiting to get in to see her just for the metabolic balance program. So amazing team that we have, and we have several more that we can share with you. Okay, so I'm just going to wrap it up here with everything that you will receive as a little recap when you become a coach. So our number one priority is to make sure you have everything that you need to be successful with a successful delivery of the Metabolic Balance Program. So all of your tools for excellence, we do absolutely everything for you. We've also created things like welcome guides, getting started guides. We have all of your marketing materials, social media templates, everything that you could need. You'll have an enhancement to the uniqueness of your practice. There's nothing else out there like metabolic balance. Very fast return on your investment, a simple integration in an existing practice, or a great foundation for starting your business, regular training opportunities. Thank you. You will also have professional support by the Metabolic Balance team in Canada, as well as our scientific advisory board. It is a scientifically validated and the only food program out there that provides an excellent opportunity as well for collaboration with other practitioners, medical centers. The list goes on who you can collaborate with. Word of mouth referrals has been huge. That's really how I grew my metabolic balance business. And then, of course, you will have the personal benefits from your own plan that Dr. Jack shared with us with her and her husband. You have access to the back office where you can generate meal plans within 24 to 48 hours at any given time. You have our Coach Hub, which is our resources. There's coaching materials, there's marketing materials. Of course, you'll have your certificate, 24/7 support from the Metabolic Balance team. We have a Facebook group that has medical advisors. So if you ever just have a quick question regarding a client that you're unfamiliar with, you can always pop on and ask questions. There's networking groups. We do multiple trainings per month. We do guest speakers. We do education seminars. We have annual updates where we do a really full events. We do Thrive Thursdays where we talk more about business. So absolutely every resource you could need is available to you to grow your business. In addition, included in your certification is your own plan. So it's really important that you experience it for yourself. So as a bonus, everyone does get a free plan included with their training, which does have that value of $560 that we talked about. All right, so here is the exciting announcement specific to IHN and something we've never done before. We've created a promo just for those who are here and also listening to the recording. So the regular price for the full certification program and everything I just covered is $29.97. Even at that price point, usually with your plan and a couple of clients, you've paid for your certification. It far exceeds the value. With the promo today, you will use promo code IHN1250 for $1,250 off, which brings the certification down to $1,747. So in addition to that, valid also until the end of the month is an additional 20% off future IHN continuing education programs completed through IHN. And I know Julia is going to touch a little bit more on that. So thank you so much. I cannot wait to welcome you to the team and just watch your business thrive and grow with the power of metabolic balance.
Jen, thank you. Dr. Jax, thank you. You can drop that slide. I'll send it to everybody. But right away, if you have any questions for Dr. Jax, you have any questions for Jen, pop them in the chat, pop them in the Q&A. But I want to say a big thank you to my darling, Vera Gemin, who is here. Is she here? Let's see. Vera Gemin. There she is. Well, did she leave? Worth. There she is. I see her.
Yeah, I was gonna say
It was because of her for years. And then finally meeting Jen that we worked this out. The last time we did this was in 2020 that we launched Metabolic Balance. And then it has grown exponentially from there. But thank you, Jen. Thank you, dear Vera, for doing this for us. I understand the value is what it is, which is why you're only giving us a month to do it. So I'm really excited about it. So please, if you have any questions, pop them in the Q&A, but I'm going to be sending everybody again on the call, everybody who registered. You probably, if you get your IHN digest, you would have already got some information on it. And the other people I wanted to mention was Jane Durst-Pulkeys, exclusively Metabolic Balance, from Portugal. She's enjoying Portugal. Doing Metabolic Balance is Sujata Kalbenirgia, if I pronounce that right. Right? I'm not sure. Yeah. And then Judy Ward-Preet, who I know well, and Charlene Stiles is another one. But there's so many, which is amazing. Now, we have a couple of questions that I'm going to get into for both of you. But thank you again, Jen. Dr. Jax, you're infallible in the way that you share information. Just gorgeous. Okay, so let me do this. Dr. Jax, this is for you. What would be a good strategy for an 8-year-old whom is growing and constantly grazing and experiencing gut health issues? That's so prevalent nowadays, isn't it?
It is. It's so prevalent. And I think that, snacking, I've just seen, an explosion in snacking. And even so, where a lot of programs, I'm shocked at how many, diet programs really can emphasize like 6 small meals a day. And one of the clients that actually I had who'd done, like Jen said, so many things, that was one of her feedback. She's like, wow, she's like, you only want me to eat 3 times a day. Like, this is very different. All the other programs, they said 6 small meals, don't get hungry. And I think that that's just one of the things that's so fundamentally wrong, both to reemphasize from the insulin perspective, but then also the microbiome, the gut health perspective. And we know that those two things are so intertwined, but especially if someone's having gut health issues, then you really want to try to, have the 3 square meals a day and reduce, not just, because for kids, I get it. It can be hard, but we want to focus on balance and protein. And it's something that is so key. Now, I know the metabolic balance is not for kids, but I will emphasize that when a lot of feedback I got was people were shocked at how satisfied they were between meals. And I think that that's the power of a well-balanced meal that is rich in the nutrients that your body needs, right? Because a lot of times if we're not getting the nutrients that we're deficient in, we have hunger signals. So I think for that 8-year-old, the things I would emphasize are making sure that there's sufficient protein and fibers for sure, because those really help with the sustenance, but then also as nutrient rich as possible, because those deficiencies can also be an element. And I'd also look to a good probiotic and perhaps even some antimicrobials, because when we have dysbiosis, that can also be a driver of food cravings and sugar cravings. And of course, the hydration. The hydration is when we're not fully hydrated, that can also drive hunger pangs when it's more of a dehydration. So those would be the things I'd be thinking of top of mind.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Jax. And Mark, the second part to that, you may have answered it. Intermittent fasting for how long during the day?
So for how long? So I would say it really depends. Like with the metabolic balance, it's really emphasizes about 5 hours between the meals and spacing that out. And then like at least, is it 10 hours overnight, Jen? You're the expert. Or
yeah, I that would be the minimum. Yeah, I would say it would be in and around would be the 10 hours. And yes, a little bit different for children if that's where if this was still on the same question.
It still is, it's the 8-year-old.
Yeah.
But for the program,
Yeah, and I think, oh, sorry for the program, but yes, and I would say that like at least like 4 to 5 hours between meals is ideal, right? And if they're having lots of snacking, then it's like reduce, right? If you can get away with 3 square meals and a snack, again, just trying to tighten it up and looking at some of the other stuff, right? Like maybe there's other changes you can make first with focusing on the hydration, maybe a good probiotic, get some of that gut health like turned over and focus on what they're eating and maybe allow them to naturally then not need as much. And of course, like the refined foods, if there's refined foods, processed foods, sugars, like any of that, that's going to send the body into the blood sugar spikes and valleys that do promote that driving insulin. But it is a bad cycle, right? Because the spike in insulin does often promote, more of that hunger. So I appreciate the cycle to get out of, but.
And it's funny, Dr. Jason Fung will say, we have a after school snack, and after a pre-soccer snack, and then we have a pre-dinner snack, then we have dinner, then we have an after dinner snack, and then we've got a bedtime snack.
It's something that's been, I think, so normalized, and I don't, of my personal belief and what I've seen from what we know about physiology from multiple facets, namely here, insulin, blood sugar, microbiome, it's not optimal.
Okay, thank you. Mark has another question, and I'm going to get to the rest of them here. Would using Lactobacillus salivarius as a prebiotic in the mouth biome aid in digestion or other gut health issues?
So the Lactobacillus salivarius, so this is where there are some amazing Lactobacillus salivarius. I'd always come back to which one. Like we want to look at the strain and we want to find a particular Lactobacillus salivarius that is supported by research. That's always first and foremost, is make sure we've got strains of the species that are supported by research. Lactobacillus species in general, whether it's the salivarius or acidophilus, those tend to really help support and inhabit the upper region of the small intestine, which does really help to facilitate digestion from a number of ways. One with just the breakdown of food, absorption of nutrients, but then also you've got that gut-brain element that happens there that the lactobacillus, different variety of species can be really supportive of, and gut immune, and really, a multitude of functions. So I do like to have heavy emphasis on different species of lactobacillus, including salivarius, and just focus on making sure that they're research-backed strains.
Okay, thank you. One for you, Jen. Does the program, Dana, and hi, Dana, does the program go into longer type fasts at all? Or it's pretty structured, isn't it?
The program is structured in what I call daily intermittent fasting. And so I explain this to my clients as metabolic flexibility and the body's ability to flip between burning glucose as fuel and fat as fuel. So when we have 3 really well-balanced meals a day for stable blood sugars. And so what happens is kind of halfway between those 5 hours is usually when you're having that metabolic flexibility, you're having that switch. And so 5 hours is the goal. Of course, people have really busy schedules. And so if you're kind of following that roughly 5 hours, then you're having that longer 14-hour fast, right? You're having that longer stretch from dinner until breakfast. And then that's when we're really able to tap into, once again, metabolic flexibility and burn more fat as fuel. And so I like to refer to this as more daily intermittent fasting. So we don't go longer stretches than that with the program. And I find it to be very effective, but also very realistic and sustainable for people who are busy, they're on the go, and they just need to make sure that they're adequately nourishing their bodies.
Sometimes I think, thank you, Jen, that people will ask that, and maybe Dana's asking that because autophagy is so hot nowadays. And taking 2, 5, 10 years off your life through autophagy is, again, it's trending, right? Now, this one, again, is for Dr. Jax. If someone is immunocompromised and already have toxins in their system, can they still take fermented foods?
Fermented foods? I wouldn't be so, yeah, I think I've never heard of any caution with fermented foods per se. I think that with certain probiotics, you do have to be very careful because, if someone's immunocompromised, there has been anecdotal cases in the literature where people that are immunocompromised did become septic, and those were with actually spore based. So we want to be mindful. I think that probiotics have a huge offering of health, but we do have to recognize that these are still microbes, and so there can be an element of risk. It's parcel why I tend to lean heavily towards human strain, because there tends to be a better safety profile in addition to for certain strains maybe better breadth of benefits. But again, I think that it's just really important to be strain by strain and mindful. There's a lot of immunocompromised individuals who benefit, and practitioners will be utilizing probiotics to support. But so I've never heard any issues with fermented foods. But again, the fermented foods are going to help a facet of the microbiome. They won't replace the probiotics. So I think those two things go really nicely hand in hand, but just needing to be extra cautious with the selection of a probiotic to go along with those fermented foods and fibers. Yeah.
Super. And that's why we look at a practitioner for those answers.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, again, maybe it's just also sourcing where the fermented foods are coming from. I would be much more cautious for any kind of like homemade DIY kind of things. Like, I think if you're getting commercially, available that are more like again.
Okay. No, good. Thank you. Thank you. Jen, Juan is asking, and I think I know the answer. If we are able to purchase the program now before June 30th, can we still take it in October? It's not as if we have to pay and start right away, because some people are busy schedules. It's only a month, and now we're panicked that we have this $12.50 off and that we'd have to start right away.
That's absolutely a great question. And it is a completely self-paced program. So the program itself to be fully certified, takes around 20 hours. Once you have access, once you've purchased the program and you've enrolled, you are welcome to pace yourself and complete it at any pace that you like. So if you want to take advantage of the promotion and are not able to start until the fall, that's absolutely no problem.
Perfect. I knew the answer to that, but I would never be as elegant as you. Dr. Jax, in metabolic syndrome, does caloric deficit with a high protein diet work? And I didn't even ask you if I could call you that, because we called you that before, Dr. Jax, because that's what
yeah, of course. Like everybody. Yeah, of course. Of course.
Metabolic syndrome, does caloric deficit with high protein diet work?
So I think that, there's a couple of things to unpack there. I would say, like, how much of a caloric deficit are we talking about? How much protein are we talking about? I think with metabolic syndrome, I'm here because I'm such an advocate of Dr. Wolf's program that he's built, because it's not, I think just fundamentally, it's so grounded in truly holistically meeting the body's needs and not leaning into a trend per se of, because I do think there's a lot of high protein emphasis, and we want sufficient protein, but more than anything, we want balance, right? We want sufficient protein, but we also want sufficient fiber. And I see that getting lost sometimes with the high protein diets, and the lack of fiber, whether it's from like a dense rye bread as recommended by Dr. Wolf, or the plant-based, it's like those are so important for the microbiome and other facets of health. So I'm much more prone to the balance piece, and that's why I'm an advocate here, because I subscribe to not just the variety of nutrients, but that's really pinpointing to the individual based on their blood work.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's see. Galit also has a fermented food question. You mentioned fermented foods as a great option to help optimize the microbiome. Would you recommend this to someone who has a reoccurrence of candida to stay away from fermented foods? No.
Yeah, I wouldn't. That wouldn't be my concern. I think that with candida, I wouldn't rely on just fermented foods in a probiotic. Like those are good foundational elements, because part of what fermented foods do is they can really help support like the pH of the gut and different things and help the terrain. But I would absolutely still include fermented foods and a probiotic. But I would, if someone has candida, especially if it's recurrent, that's where I think you really need to lean into the antimicrobials and things like garlic, caprylic acids. I love that comboed with some homeopathics as well, like kind of hitting it from both ends. And then always in really complex cases, if they're not responding to those antimicrobials, you want to take a look and consider heavy metals, particularly mercury, because mercury can make it very difficult to eradicate candida. And so it really, they really, I've had a couple cases where once we got that under control, we figured that out, then we were able to really eradicate more sustainably. So
nothing a little zeolite can't fix.
I do love zeolite. It might take you a little more than zeolite, but yes, I do love zeolite. Yeah, from topical skin to, yeah.
Right? Yeah, good. Thank you. What is the cost of the business add-on? Trisha, I'm not sure what that means.
Answer that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I just popped in a reply. So the certification has 3 components: the theoretical, practical,
the business,
and the business, and it is included. There's certainly no additional cost. Our coach hub is included. Everything is included because our top priority is the success of our coach.
I love the program because, first of all, so many, after 18 years of being at IHN, so many people are doing it. But it's the only one where you get those labs. And people sometimes dismiss this, done for you. This is not a done for you. This is a full evidence-based protocol. You manage it, you coach it, you be the hands-on deliverer of it. And it's, again, a great for income producing. Excellent. Diabetes type 1. What are your thoughts on that? Is this totally out of metabolic balances range, Dr. Jax and Jen?
I'm going to say that I think that anyone with diabetes, anyone with blood sugar issues, whether it's diabetes type 1, type 2, it's different mechanisms of action, different ways of kind of getting there, but it's no less important to manage your blood sugar. So having a program like this is totally appropriate because, again, it's getting to the fundamental element of managing blood sugar, managing insulin levels, healthy eating. It's really healthy metabolism, right? So it's so much more, as Jen mentioned, Dr. Wolf created this for so much more than weight management. That's almost a symptom, of having good metabolic health is having, sustainable, healthy weight. And so I really, don't think this is out of spec. This can be a great addition to any kind of treatment of different conditions. It really is getting at the heart of chronic disease. It's getting that dietary piece, in a really structured manner. And then you can add on the different layers and modalities that might not be needed for other conditions.
Yep, absolutely. And I can confidently say that I've worked with several type 1 diabetics, and it's the appreciation in the delivery of education to better understand how to manage their diagnosis. And so what they learn through the Metabolic Balance program about nourishing themselves, yes, of course, we need to address highs and lows and things when you're managing someone with type 1 diabetes, but I've had tremendous success with the program for type 1 diabetics.
Okay, good. And so we're talking about heart and CoQ10. I don't think, is there any effect on any other organ, liver or kidneys, CoQ10?
From a positive perspective or like a
negative perspective?
No, I wouldn't have any concerns. No, I think that especially when you think about CoQ10 and the role, we do think about it a lot for heart health because it's so important and it's a huge support for that. But when we think about CoQ10 supporting mitochondria, it's going to support liver health, other facets of organs, because we're really helping support at the cellular level. So if we're supporting the mitochondria, there's a big ripple effect for a lot of different organ systems. And I wouldn't have any concerns from liver, or quite the opposite, actually.
Exactly. Our faculty member, Baljinder Choker, who teaches supplementation.
I know Baljinder, yeah.
Oh, you know Baljinder. He's like,
do.
oh yeah, CoQ10 it up.
I know Baljinder. I'm fine.
Oh, good. Yeah, we love Bal.
I'm a fan.
He is something else.
Yeah.
Are the meal plans, Erica's asking Jen for you, are the meal plans customized for individuals with things like, a good question, SIBO, IBS, high histamine, etc., that have conditions? That's actually a really good question. If we hit clients with conditions, yeah.
I was just gonna, if I can jump into other thing, I was gonna say that I loved, because I was also kind of thinking about some of this, was I loved that, Jen, when I was working with you to do my plan, like I have an issue with dairy, like that does not do well for my gut or skin. And I could just tell Jen, I could say, can you make me a plan that has no, dairy in it? Or like some of these sensitivities, if we know someone has histamine, you could, what are some of those high histamine? So I really appreciate this in ND because, so
literally, literally any condition that you can think of. So this is the importance of the medical intake form, the personal health history form, is that we need to understand exactly what is going on with this individual. So people who have IBS, or again, like any condition that you could think of, things like gallbladder removal is going to significantly impact their nutrition plan. Things like any other digestive issues, gut health issues. There's so many things. So it is very important that all of these get inputted into our database along with the lab results, sent to the medical team in Germany, and then they create the plan accordingly. So yes, every condition is always going to be listed so that you can make sure that you include everything for your client.
And that is an excellent end to this webinar. Every condition, right? I mean, within reason, I'm being a little saucy, but yes, absolutely. So this was all metabolically functional for everything that's downstream, like weight loss and diabetes and. I want to thank you both. We've had you on since 2:45 because you came in to say hi before. And we're going to close out. Thank you for answering the questions. Jen, thank you for your amazing outro, and Dr. Jax for your amazing presentation. We're going to package everything up. And you did mention during your presentation that we can send out the slides to everybody.
Yes, I will send those to you, Julia. I'll send them to you, and then you can share them for sure.
Fantastic. I see a lot of thank yous coming in the chat.
Thanks for having us.
Q&A, yes. Very good. I'll be talking to you very soon, Jen.
Thanks, everyone.
Right?
Thanks so much for being here. Thank you.
Yes. Okay.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.